Welcome, everyone, to the Improvly Speaking podcast. I'm your host, Dayna Gowan, and I'm here with a very special guest today. I'm excited to chat. You're going to be so excited to hear and listen and learn all about this awesome guest. So you're in for a super fantastic treat today. If you're new, joining for the first time, welcome. Let me tell you what this podcast is all about. On this podcast, I like to interview experienced speakers and improvisers. I also like to interview people who take improv classes for fun or maybe for career development and goals. And I also like to interview people who use improv in their daily lives but don't think of it as improv. And I think our guest today is kind of a mixture of all three, although she definitely knows its improv skills that she uses now too. So we'll get the best of all three worlds today. And I got to tell you, our guest today, Jessica Halem, is an amazing speaker and improviser and stand-up comic who uses her skills for advocacy and change. So without further ado, let me tell you all about our amazing guest. Jessica Halem is a wildly sought-out public speaker and communications strategist. She is the senior director of the ADOS LGBTQ Health Initiative at the University of Pennsylvania, which is a think tank that collaborates with industry, nonprofits, governments, and entrepreneurs to improve the health and well-being specifically for LGBTQ people. Previously, she served as the inaugural LGBTQ Director at Harvard Medical School, where she led transformations across the university and its teaching hospitals for 6 years. Before that, she lived in Chicago and organized the nation's first cultural competency, I'm going to get it, cultural competency trainings for the CDC and served on then candidate Obama's first LGBTQ advisory committee. While in Chicago, she studied at Second City and made a name for herself as a stand-up comic. According to her website, she is sometimes still funny. So we'll see today. We'll see today if she lives up to that sometimes still funny claim. And she continues to teach improv skills for greater empathy in the workplace. After a decades-long career as a stand-up comic, she is now a sought-after speaker addressing health equity, workplace inclusion, and innovation. Jessica serves on the board of the Tegan and Sarah Foundation, where she's a part of the team that revamped LGBTQ healthcare directory with GLMA. Jessica lives in Cape Cod with her partner, Jen, and Jessica holds a Bachelor's of Arts degree from Sarah Lawrence College and an MBA from Simmons University. I believe it's so important to say our guests' introductions because
she sounds fabulous. She sounds great.
She's here. Please welcome the joyful, jovial, and joke master, Jessica Halem.
Oh my gosh. Thank you. Everyone. Thank you. It's so nice to be here today. Please tip your bartenders. I'm here all week. Order the cream drinks. They're delicious.
Even the mocktails are delicious here. I got to tell you.
Even the mocktails are delicious. That is the hard part about stand-up comedy is that there's a lot of alcohol involved. It's not for the faint of heart. You got to figure out where you are with that. You got to keep it together.
So maybe that's why I've been struggling to go to open mic nights as a pregnant lady because, there's a lot of alcohol needed, maybe liquid courage a little bit too.
I know. And it's true that, drinking and bars and all of that is a good time and it's fun to have comedy involved. But I think what we're going to talk about today is how do we figure out a way to integrate all of that into our daily life and not just save it for once a week for an hour in a dark room?
Absolutely. I agree. No alcohol needed here for this episode
That's
or
right.
for life when you got improv
That's
skills to
that's
get you
right.
through.
That's right. You you wanna cringe over what just came out of your mouth? Try improv. You can embarrass yourself completely sober if you learn these improv skills.
Oh, I love it. Jessica, I'm so glad you're here. And I want to just touch on how we met too. We met at the Art and Science of Health Promotion Conference about 2 months ago now. We're recording this in mid June. So the conference was 2 months ago, which I
Right.
can't
That's
believe
right.
because it was such a good time and it
I know.
flew
It was.
by so fast. And, I did the thing I was thinking back, I would see you at breakfast or something or, like, passing in the hall, and I'm like, "Oh, we gotta chat chat because I know you did improv and you led the" I always say it wrong, plenary session no, plenary session. I always
Plenary.
wanna
Right,
say
right. A
yeah.
plenary.
I always wanna say, like, plenary, like canary, I don't know,
Oh, that's
so
better.
the
I like plenary better. I like
yeah, right.
plenaries. Yeah, I know. I mean, that's the thing about conferences. You think you've got all the time in the world, and
Yeah.
especially when it's out, and you've got a million people to meet and things like that. And I know I'm sorry that we did not get to record live in person there, but here we are. The conference was well worth it because we made a great new connection, and I was
Mhm.
so thrilled to go to your workshop and see a place where it really brought together all of my loves, which is, of course, thinking about health and healthcare issues is really my bread and butter. But to see that you have a conversation about improv, I mean, it's a dream come true to bring together all of those under one roof.
I'm so grateful that the conference is open to that and allows us to explore and introduce people to new things like improv. And certainly they had amazing sessions too. Ecstatic dance I went to
Oh,
afterwards.
you did. Good for
I
you. Good for
did. I
you.
actually, because you had your plenary session and then there was like a 30-minute break. So I went and took a 10-minute cat nap and then I went and did the
And
ecstatic
then you
dance
did the
session.
oh my gosh, that is so I
Mhm.
don't know if we're selling the conference. I feel like if anyone heard that, they'd be like, "I don't know if I should be going to this
Right.
conference. It sounds kinda
Yeah.
goofy." But it's true, it's like people who are concerned about the health of others all getting together, this is what ends up happening.
Thank you, yes, and to sell it better for our professionals listening, your plenary session was called "Pride, Prejudice, and Medical Progress: The Journey to LGBTQ+ plus Health Equity," because the conference theme was about equity and health
That's
equity,
right. That's right.
and I gotta tell you, your plenary session I'm just gonna say it wrong, plenary your session was fabulous. You were vulnerable, you were funny, you were engaging, it was one of the best that I saw that whole week and just, because you were in a big room, and so when you're doing that big keynote type of speech, it can be hard to get some engagement a little
Yeah.
bit, but you handled
Yeah.
it so fabulously.
Yeah, I wish that everybody who wants to make a living, doing keynotes, I just see it all the time. People talking about how they, wish they were doing more public speaking, or they're afraid of public speaking. And I know that this is sort of the point of this entire podcast is to just keep reminding folks that improv skills are at the heart of all of that. It is something that everybody can learn being, owning a stage, being in front of people. There's nothing more powerful in this lifetime. If you have something important to say and you want to say it, you've got to figure out how to do it in a compelling live version. So I'm thankful every day for my improv training.
Ugh. We'll get into kind of what you talked about a little bit, I think, in that speech and then also in your work too. I know I left feeling more empowered to do better in my professional life and personal life too. As we can always improve. We can always be
Yeah.
more inclusive in our
Yeah.
communications and the way we talk and just also you had a slide that said making mistakes with grace and you did a little shout out to the improv folks and we were like,
Yeah.
yeah, that's us.
Yep, that's right,
Yeah,
right?
making mistakes with grace
I
because you do make mistakes.
That's right. That's right. I mean, and I hope so. Making mistakes is a sign of trying something new. Making
Mm.
mistakes is the sign that you are in uncharted waters. And only when we actually are pushing ourselves into new waters is when we're actually going to see change happen, right? If we all stick to, what we know and what we're comfortable with and how it's always been, then things will always remain the same. But,
Mhm.
taking chances is where some of the biggest payoffs and some of the biggest aha moments and the connection and growth can come from. And with that, there's always the chance to stick your foot right in your mouth, to trip right over yourself, to absolutely say the wrong thing. And I am more convinced than ever after doing this work for all these years that the fear of making the mistake is what holds a lot of people back from trying to change, trying something new, trying to do better, trying to get outside their comfort zone, that fear of making mistakes. So if we all just sort of recognize, yep, you're totally going to make a mistake. You're totally going to stick your foot in it. You're totally, it could be really, it could be really, really, it could be tiny, it could be huge. So I do believe that there is a way to prepare and actually practice how to make mistakes.
I can remember in the presentation I did, the breakout session, I said the word "eluberant." I think I was trying to
Oh
say
God. Right.
exuberant and
In,
elated,
and in front of
and
smart people.
yes, very smart people, PhDs, MDs,
Right.
MBAs,
Right.
MPHs in the room, yeah, and you know what? I just rolled with it, and I said it again and called it back because it got a laugh because it was a mistake,
That's
but,
great. That's great.
handling it with grace or improv
A
skills and
humor.
laughing at
Yeah.
it and not being like, "Oh, I'm stupid,"
Oh my
and that was a
God.
funny moment, and after that speech, after I did that, I was like, "Yes." Improv skills are paying off. My clowning skills are paying off.
Right.
Call it back and make it funny and not
Yeah.
worry about the mistake. So I'm just patting myself on the back for that.
Good. I love it. That's a great example. I totally love it. Yeah. I mean, how many times has something happened and suddenly you're disassociated from your body? You're suddenly over yourself, watching yourself. Just it keeps
Yes.
getting worse. You can't get out of it. You're looking at other people. They're looking. Oh my God! You're just like ah.
Face
So,
gets
uh,
red, ugh.
oh, you're sweating, and it's
Mhm.
all you can think about. My God. And then we just replay those moments as we're laying in bed before where we're trying to, why did I say that? Oh God. Why did I say that? Everybody hates me.
But they don't.
They
They've
don't.
moved on with their lives. They've forgotten, most likely, what you
I
said.
mean, here's the truth about human beings. We are only thinking about ourselves at all times.
Correct? Yep.
Right? So if you actually do the math, well, if everyone's laying in bed thinking about all the mistakes they made during the day and the stupid things they said, well, then you're not sitting. I mean, think about it. I'm not sitting there thinking about what other people said and did. I mean,
No, not at
sure. I mean,
all.
there are people that, there are moments where you're sort of like, oh, I'm jealous of that person or I'm thinking about that person. But how many times do you like actually remember the details of that stupid thing that somebody said? I mean, that you might remember how somebody made you feel, but that you
Yes.
don't remember what they said. And that's the thing about a
Mhm.
mistake with grace is that you can still affect how people remember how you made them feel. You can actually still change the feeling and the energy of the room, and they'll never remember the exact thing that you said, but they'll remember how you made them feel. So again, that doing it with grace, that like showing your vulnerability, that call back, that making them laugh, whatever it is that's comfortable for you is the thing that people remember and not, oh my God, did this person not even go to college? Does she not know how to talk? Right? Nobody thinks that way.
Yeah, I feel that so much. It takes time to learn that and practice that and understand it and even feel it in your body, and
Yeah.
once you get that, then it's almost freeing because 'cause you're like, "I just have to be me and accept myself, and then others can accept me for me too, as a speaker, as a human being, in whatever I'm trying to do," and it is actually very freeing to let go of the idea that everyone is thinking about you because they're not.
That's right. That's exactly right.
Jessica, I noticed I didn't say this in your bio, but I noticed that we share a New Orleans connection
Oh,
too.
yeah.
So I saw on your LinkedIn that I assumed you lived in New Orleans for 2 years after Katrina and helped nonprofits coordinate their community programs. Is that right?
And that's right. With an ex of mine, we ended up in New Orleans. We were there actually year we didn't get there obviously right after Katrina. We got there, I think, at year 3 and 4 post Katrina.
Oh,
I
okay.
can actually now I can't really now I'm like kind of blanking on it, but it, or 4 or 5 or 3 or 4 because we were down there for my partner's job, but because I had a lot of nonprofit experience, I ended up working with some wonderful grassroots funders who were interested in supporting grassroots leaders who, if you know New Orleans at that time, you know that a lot of
Yes.
money came into New Orleans after Katrina. It actually ended up being something like, $8 billion. There's some ridiculous number
Wow.
about
Okay.
the amount of money that ended up coming flooding another flood into New Orleans. And as a sort of like a northern, white girl, what kind of role could I play? And what I was really able to do was in the background support the nonprofit leaders who had been there for a long, long time and were suddenly really inundated with a lot of money. And I was able to support them and find ways to help them navigate this new time of, Jessica, Brad Pitt's going to be here on Monday. Can you help me get ready, sort of thing, right? I mean, it was sort of that kind of time when there was a
Wow.
lot of money and celebrity and focus. And so I just loved getting to support leaders who knew the right thing to do. They knew what they needed to do. They were just trying to sort of figure out how to handle a lot of external attention and eyes on them. And also during that time that the city undertook its first ever master plan. Famously, you might remember the original mayor ended up, I think, in jail, designated a bunch of areas of New Orleans that they just were not going to rebuild at all. And then the people found out that did not work. Of course, you can't really do that to people. And then we
Mhm.
created a new master planning process where people were really engaged at a different level, creating what really ended up being the roadmap to rebuilding that beautiful, beautiful place.
Thank you for sharing. I ask that and tell you that because I was a senior in high school when Katrina hit. So,
Oh my
uh,
gosh,
that
I
was
am so
a
old.
that was a
So,
crazy
what did you
time in
do?
my
What was it
life.
like? Yeah,
Yeah, we evacuated. I actually have a speech on LinkedIn that I did for one of my Toastmasters contests, but I don't really like it. It's very, polished, and I'm a little, like,
sure,
performative in it.
sure,
So I probably
sure.
need to redo it and actually tell it in my authentic way that I've learned to speak now. But anyway, we evacuated like an hour away and we stayed at like my uncle's farm that is on the North Shore. And my high school got 10 feet of water. So
Oh,
my senior year of high school, you have all these dreams and aspirations and expectations of
yeah,
what senior year is going to be like
ugh,
and just gets washed away literally.
yeah,
And I went to a new school for 2 weeks just in the transition just to, like, have some sense of normalcy, and then they ended up opening a transition school with one of the all-boys high schools. So the all-boys high school would go to school from 6 AM to 12 PM, and then from 1 to 6, it was like a combination of schools that were flooded, and these were all Catholic schools, so I think kind of fairly privileged, not fairly, very privileged to open up this transition school quickly. And, it was like our school, our rival girls' school, another boys' school. So I got to go to school with boys for the first time in my high
oh
school
my
career.
god,
There were like 3 boys to like 20 girls in each class.
oh
Like the
my god,
ratio
that's
was
so
very
funny.
in their favor. And, I mean, you found some positivity in really
Yeah,
the sadness and the uncertainty of it all. It was a very uncertain time, of
yeah,
course, but, yeah, it's just nice to hear, all the work that was done after.
yeah,
I went off to college after away because I honestly, like, part of me was like, "I have to get away now,"
yeah,
after being in
yeah,
it.
yeah.
I went off 10 hours away to college, and I didn't really see some of the rebuilding and the regrowth except when I would come back for holidays. But yeah, thank you for doing the work with the
Yeah. Is your
nonprofits.
family still in New Orleans?
They are, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's just I was just down there actually a couple years ago. It's really, and even still today looks so different than it did. Just of course I'm thinking about the dome,
Oh
the
yeah.
very
Yeah.
memorable dome. I do know that I was there the year. So we just have to talk about the Saints for a minute. I was there the year the Saints went to the Super Bowl,
Oh
the
wow.
first time after Katrina, and it was one of the most magical experiences. We lived in the Treme, which is a
Oh
neighborhood
my
for those of you
gosh.
listening, which is right near the quarter. So it's sort of the quarter, and then it's like the Treme, which is this beautiful, old part of New Orleans. And we lived in one of those classic, shotgun. It was a shotgun house that had been configured actually, so it wasn't quite as shotgunny. But I will never forget. I mean, everyone has all visitors have their impressions of what New Orleans is like. And it really is like that all the time. I was sort of saying it's sort of like that here, living in another sort of touristy place. I'm all
hmm
for the dollars. I'm all for people celebrating and enjoying these beautiful places. But when they won the when they won the championship before the Super Bowl, it was sort of like not full of tourists. It was just like regular local people. And we won the game, and everyone this is so New Orleans, as you will remember, you just pour out of your house when something great happens, bad or good. Everyone, you pour out of your house, and you're just like, go to the quarter. Everyone just goes to the
hmm
quarter. And I had only experienced it in this like contrite sort of touristy way at that point. This was the first time I experienced it as just like regulars. And it was just the most beautiful, awesome. There's this old woman standing in the middle of the street, just high fiving everybody walking
Oh.
by. And she's just, this is off the chain. This is off the chain. It was that moment, we're back and the team has won. And oh my God, I think about that night all the time. It's just like what it feels like to be in a community where everybody's on the same page, right? What a
Yes.
beautiful moment that was to sort of have this, all of our differences. And, it's the deep South. There's a lot of assumptions you can't make about people in Louisiana. But it was just this beautiful moment of positivity that, it really was exactly as one can imagine what that town really deserved and needed at that moment.
I have chills just thinking about that game. I was not in town at that point, I was still in
Oh,
college, but, like,
you know
I remember
exactly what
watching
I'm
the
talking
game.
about.
Oh, yeah, the
Oh,
kick that won it. I
the
have
kick.
chills, and then seeing
Oh,
people pour into the streets, like, they would show it, I have chills just you describing it, so thank you.
I know it was just such a magical experience. And it's funny because I'm of that era where we can all have our feelings about like how much money should go into a stadium and how much money, it's like this building new stadiums and teams, and where does the money go and who owns what. I'm like, that is when I became convinced. I'm like, everyone deserves a winning team. Like everyone deserves
Mm,
a town where you could really like have that moment of community of being all knit together like that. So I loved it. God, that was
yeah.
great. That was great.
Oh, I'm so glad I brought it up and you got to relive it too and
Yeah,
retell it.
me
So
too.
that's
Me too.
awesome.
Yeah.
And speaking of, I mean, you've been all over. So you've lived, I mean, now you're in Cape Cod, you lived in New Orleans a few years,
Yep.
you were in Chicago, and
Yep.
I think is that where you started your improv journey? So I want to hear about your improv journey and how and why you got started in
I
improv.
mean, I love to get to reimagine a story, rethink it. And I'm going to age myself because it's before the internet. Oh my gosh, I can't believe I'm about to say that it's before the
Which is
internet.
probably a better thing because then it's, nothing's on there, nothing's recorded.
Oh, well,
Like,
yes. Well, 100%. So this is about how signing up for classes was before the internet, and B,
oh, yeah.
I am so thankful that my life of improv is not on the internet. Yes, thank you for that. I had graduated from college. I was a theater kid my whole life,
Oh, nice.
sort of a typical moment story, perhaps. I did theater my whole, junior high, high school. It was my life was high school theater. I'm a do or die high school theater kid. I will do anything if I meet another high school theater kid, we have everything in common. I think they are very special people and they should be protected at all costs, high school theater kids. I love them. Everyone should have a high school theater program. Terrible, terrible productions. Um,
Yes.
I wasn't very good at theater. I loved theater. I loved theater. I loved being a part of theater, but I could never memorize lines. And that's what every improviser, I think, sort of versus becoming an actor. I didn't take improv because I wanted to be an actor. I knew I couldn't be an actor. I knew I wasn't a very good actor. It definitely wasn't something I knew I wanted to do, but I love theater people. I'm a theater people person. So after college, I was doing politics in New York City, and I really am like a political person. So, I've always had sort of two lives in parallel. And I think of anything that I would say, to a young person listening to this interview, the advice I would say is, there is some sort of myth that you pick sort of one path in life or what you want to be when you grow up. And I've had like a simultaneous career. I've had two careers side by side. I really believe at all times. And sometimes one career is more bigger and one is more quiet, and sometimes one is at the top and one is more at the sidelines. But I have two parts of myself that I have never not been, which is political advocacy and sort of theater comedy improv. And those are my two
Yes.
parts. And, I think there was a moment in my life where I thought, that means I should do political theater or political comedy. And sure, I've done all of that as well, but it really is two real careers. And both of them I'm proud of. I think on a bad day, when I look at my 401k, I wish, what if I had concentrated in one thing and put all my energy into one particular thing? Maybe I would actually be a star. I'm like modestly successful in both realms. But the truth is, I've had a lot of really wonderful experiences and success in my own way in both areas. So, political advocacy, always a big part of my life, and the sort of improv comedy part. So, when I was, gosh, I guess, yeah, a couple years after my first job in New York City doing politics, and it was a typical story of being burnt out. So, for those of us who do
Mm,
political work, you sort of go all in. It's campaigns. It's go 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 go
mhm.
go, and then you sort of look up and you're like, I've been drinking, Diet Coke and eating out of Chinese, food
Ugh,
containers for two
yeah.
years, and I gotta. It's funny. I don't drink Diet Coke, but people who drink Diet Coke are obsessed with it. I always say that as my go-to. So my friend ripped out an ad for stand-up comedy lessons in New York City. I took stand-up comedy lessons in New York. I think his first name was Steven something. I can't remember now. It was in a disgusting hotel
Oh,
near
no.
Times Square. It was
Sounds about
awful.
right. Yeah.
The people who
The
were
New
in the
York
class,
experience.
it was a total New York experience. It was just like some really weird guys who think they're funny. And, I would have always been an out queer person, and going to mainstream comedy stuff is really uncomfortable for me. I don't find, you got to be a really funny straight guy for me to want to be in a room with you, sort of thing. Luckily,
Yeah.
there are a lot of very funny straight guys. We could talk about that. So I loved doing stand-up comedy. I absolutely loved it. And I worked at a lot of clubs. It was at that time, actually wasn't a lot going on in New York at the time in stand-up. This was the late 90s.
Oh,
And so I actually was this was the mid 90s. There actually wasn't a lot of stand-up yet. And there wasn't a lot of paths for stand-up comedy. And my stand-up comedy coach, teacher at that time said, listen, if you're really serious about this, you should study improv comedy. And
in the
I had
'90s, late
never heard of it.
'90s.
I don't even think
Yeah.
I was like, huh? And, he said, Saturday
Interesting.
Night Live is improv comedy. And I thought, oh, well, I love Saturday Night Live, But I was like, oh, I'm not an actor. I don't want to be an actor. He said, no, 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 this is comedy. This is about comedy. Anyway, I happened to have another reason to move to Chicago. It was sort of all happening at the same time. He said, Chicago's really the place to go. And it's true. Chicago in the 90s really was the place to be for comedy.
Yeah.
And I was really looking to make a big change. So I moved to Chicago and I literally got a studio apartment. I rented a studio apartment in what's called Old Town, which is right next door to Second City. It's still there.
Wow.
Second City's still there. They've since expanded and they've taken over a lot of new space, but the original Second City Theater. And I was in an apartment building 2 doors down. And I said yes. And I rented this very small apartment where someone had smoked like before. The
Oh
person
no.
before me had been a smoker. It's disgusting. And you had to call at, September 1st at 9 a.m. They opened the books for the
Mhm.
conservatory, level. I don't remember what it was. One, I don't know if it started at 1 or started at 10 or whatever it was, but you had to call starting September 1st at 9 a.m. And now that I ended up becoming very, very good friends with Judy, who answered the phones. And I called, because I was a diligent little person. I called right away. And it wasn't that popular then. I didn't need to be that diligent, but I called right away and I signed up for the first level of improv class at Second City. And back then, the way they did it was very smart. They had a world of classes that anybody could sign up for. And you could take, and there was like levels of that, 1 or 2 or 3 levels of that. They could keep that churning going for a while. And then you would have to audition to get into what was called the conservatory or conservative.
Mhm.
I don't remember. And then that was a very serious group of classes that ended up turning into the way we think about improv classes now, which is you have to invite your friends and you see their shows and they put on shows. And that's where they
Very
sort of
good
meeted people
friends
at.
come to those
Very good,
shows. Yeah.
very good
Yeah.
friends. And luckily I was at the beginning of the craze, so my friends hadn't been burnt yet. But anyway, Chicago really was the height of improv comedy then. And so it was Second City, Improv Olympic, and Annoyance Theater were the 3 major
Yeah.
improv schools and theaters. And I never did Improv Olympic. That's where the very famous Sharna worked at.
Mm.
I never did Improv Olympic. There was a little bit of a territorial thing. So Second City
Yeah.
started it all. Then some teacher, Sharna, I think I'm probably getting this history wrong. Let someone else tell that story. But Improv Olympics started and then Annoyance started. So everything sort of is in relationship, of course, to Second City, those original rules that we all know so well. Those rules still really apply at the other schools, but they had their own sort of take on all of it. And I studied at Second City and at Annoyance Theater for years and years. And Mick was the head of the school there at Annoyance Theater, very famous, wonderful guy. And we did
Yeah.
great shows, and it was a lot of fun. I I don't remember if I ever auditioned to be on the main stage. So it sort of worked at Second City, like people would sort of get plucked out, or you would end up auditioning for the actual, what you would think of as the theater, as the shows that people
Mhm.
would go to see, the fancy ones. They had touring companies also. I was doing all of that to influence and make me better at stand-up comedy. I wasn't terrific at the improv theater. It really is a very serious theatrical program. Both of those places, very a serious commitment if you do it, where they put on shows and they really do a lot of extra time. And I started producing and organizing stand-up comedy shows. But we were all very supportive of each other. The improvisers came to my stand-up shows and all the stand-up folks would go to we all went back and forth a lot and supporting each other in Chicago at that time.
That's awesome. Oh my gosh, I'm just sitting here, like, listening to
Yeah,
the history, like, you were in the midst of it in the
I
'90s, like,
know.
the
They
heyday
were my
of
teachers,
comedy,
so
improv, yeah,
I
that's
know Tina
awesome.
Fey was my teacher, Amy Poehler was
What?
my teacher.
Yeah.
They were all they were all there. They were all just regular,
Mhm.
people on stage. I lived there. I went to the shows every Friday night. I mean, it was just, they were just so, I think that was like the best part is just, it's one thing to take the classes and learn from really wonderful teachers. Teaching improv is a really wonderful, people who do it well are really tremendous people. But to also then just be completely a part of this community where you're going to shows all the time and you're just watching it unfold all the time and you're seeing people at the height of their craft. It's so inspiring to see that kind of churn. I mean, just the kind of like
Yeah.
regularly putting on shows and bringing, ripped from the headlines right onto stage. And it was just the 90s in Chicago was tremendous. It was just absolutely amazing. And I feel so lucky that I happened to end up in Chicago at that time by happenstance. Really became a professional touring stand-up comic. I took it very seriously. I'm happy.
Wow.
I made some money. I made a name for myself. It was all mostly before the internet. And had some really great experiences in shows. And then, you just get tired.
So you kind of were you having your 2 separate careers going at that time, or you really dove into the
Yeah.
stand-up
Oh, no,
world at
that's a
that
that's
point?
a great question. In the beginning, I would say I spent the first 5 years. Yes, I probably can name sort of like the first 3 or 4 jobs that I had, maybe 5 or 6 years that were very 9 to 5. So and again, the great part about Chicago is everybody had an improv actor in their office. Everybody's at that time, everybody's receptionist or their secretary or a sales staff, everybody had an improv actor on staff. So when you had a job, when you got a job and you were like, listen, I'm looking for a great job, but I got to be able to leave at a moment's notice, or I might be late some days, or you're just sort of not, you don't want to be working at the height of your. Listen, kids listening to this, we used to work past 9 to 5. We used to work all the time. We used to work late. We used
No, I don't believe it.
to we used to give it our all. So when you got a job where you said, listen, I'm not going to ever be able to stay late, it was like a big deal, right? So
Mm,
I had a
no
couple of jobs
boundaries. No
no
boundaries.
boundaries. So I had
Yeah.
jobs in the beginning and I loved those jobs. They ended up being really terrific jobs where they supported my comedy career, where I could
Nice.
take off time. I could go. I mean, again, we didn't keep track of PTO. We didn't keep track of the days off. I mean, they just, you were a great, the deal was, the deal was you were overqualified for the job they hired you to do. So they got a really great receptionist, a really great administrative assistant, right? Who was like too smart for their britches. You kept the office laughing. You were everybody's friend. But then the deal was you ran out the door at 4 o'clock because you wanted to go and, have dinner or get ready before your class that night. So there
Okay.
was just a deal that you got an overqualified person in some job, but that, you were supporting a struggling comic at the same time.
Well, so I have to ask, so you're a phenomenal speaker. I mean, just hearing you talk, I can hear you talk about the 90s heyday in Chicago, just your experience in New Orleans. Like I could listen to this all day. And so I have to ask, have you always loved public speaking, or did you have to learn to love it? Or did the theater kid in you love speaking
I
and being
have.
in the spotlight?
I have this conversation a lot. I don't want to say this out loud because then people who struggle with public speaking will hear me say this and they'll go, "Oh, yep, I'm never going to be good at it. It's not for me." But the truth is that I have always loved public speaking. I've always loved communicating with people because I love people. I love people. I love being a part of the human race. I love being alive. I love being connected to other human beings, all kinds of human beings. And you fundamentally have to love audiences and love other people to be a good public speaker. And that doesn't mean that just because I like it or I'm good at it naturally, doesn't mean that you don't have to still work at it and be aware of yourself and take it seriously. And so I think that's one of the things I always like to say to people is you can be somebody who thinks they're really funny, has a lot of great stories, and then have a complete lack of self-awareness. And you can be somebody who isn't very comfortable or confident in front of an audience, but because you are self-aware, you can get better at it. And those are, I think, two peas in the same pod: self-awareness and the ability to be very aware of your audience. It doesn't matter, again, if you were sort of like born to do this or if you struggle to do it. You still have to be aware of your audience, right? I don't know if you sort of agree with that part of the public speaking secret.
Oh yeah, it's so from my experience, I am the complete opposite. I struggled with public speaking. I hated being put on the spot. I hated all eyes on me. I would get red-faced, I would get shaky and nervous. And this was pre-improv. I was not a theater kid. I was a sports kid. I think I secretly wanted to be a theater kid. Like
Yes, yes, you
I loved
did. Yes,
I
you
know, I did, and
did.
I would have never allowed myself to even try because it looked hard, I would have looked stupid, all those things. So I stuck with what I was quote unquote "good at." But I found with public speaking, the real secret, or one of the secrets of public speaking, is it isn't about you.
Right,
But
right.
for so many years, I was making it about me of like, I need to say the right thing. I want them to like me. I want them to go home and say they heard this great speech from me. And like, again, people aren't going home and talking about anyone else but themselves to their families.
That
But
terrible. Oh,
I wanted to my ego wanted to be better, and once I got that idea of, like, it's not about me, it's about the audience. It's about connecting with the
that's
audience
right.
and what
That's
they
right.
take away, and really, I've only discovered this in the past 5 years or so in my speaking journey, which I know this is not anything new, but it really isn't about you, and so if the audience takes away this nugget of gold from what I said, amazing. They could forget my name and that I said it, but if they
That's right.
got this golden piece of information that helps their lives and transforms their lives, I've done my job as a speaker.
Because you have a higher purpose. You are
Yeah.
interested in improving people's lives. You are interested in making their day a little bit better, of an aha moment, an
Mhm.
awakening, learning. Improving other people's lives is bigger than me, and it's bigger than you, and it's bigger than the mistake or the fumble or the sweaty armpits.
Mhm.
If you actually care about improving, other people's lives on this earth. We have one time around, we think, and life is short. And if you are actually motivated by improving, the human condition, then it becomes less and less important whether or not you're afraid.
All these, like, golden nuggets that you say right now in this podcast, I'm like, "Oh, it's so good.
Yes.
It's so
That
good."
is there's a quote that I live by. Audre Lorde has this quote that says, "When I use my power in the service of my vision, it becomes less and less important whether or not I'm afraid." Something like that.
Mm.
It's about something bigger than us. And that's what public speaking is, being live in front of other people is about, human connection. Yeah, and I think it's true. I think writers feel this way about how, writing something to connect, that might, for other people, giving a gift to other people and telling a story or teaching something or making a fool of yourself on behalf of others, all of that is on behalf of other human beings. And when you work in service of others, then your own ego is less important.
So you did improv stand-up in the '90s. How have you seen these skills of improv stand-up translate to your professional career, personal life in general? And are you still I assume you're not taking classes now, but you still utilize those skills, right?
Every day. I am not overstating this to say that I live by yes and as my life
Mhm.
philosophy.
Love
My
that.
life, I of course I had never heard of it until I took the class at Second City. But as soon as I understood it, you learn this rule called yes But when you really live it, you see how powerful it is as a human being. And that's what makes yes and such a powerful concept. It's an easy rule in an improv scene, right? It's just it is a framework, it's a setup, it's a way to actually, as we know from, taking any improv class, it keeps the scene moving forward. It's a way to build upon.
Mhm.
It's active listening, it's optimistic, it's connection. It's such a brilliant, distillation of all of that into two words, right? Well, it's yes, comma, and dot, 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 right?
Mhm.
And I I think I yes and every day. Sometimes when I'm not feeling it, when I'm in a bad mood, when I'm not feeling optimistic, I literally can force myself to say yes and. I don't always say it out loud. I'm sort of embodying it. But sometimes even when I'm not feeling it, if I force myself to even say it, it can click me back into that optimistic mood. It can click me back into that affirming growth mindset. Yes, and is a growth mindset.
Mhm.
It says that there's something of value in everything that someone says. There's value in all people, there's value in everything that's being said and done. And again, if you look at human beings and the human condition as an opportunity at all times for connection and growth and building, then you can't help but be optimistic, right? You can't help but be a grower and a organizer and a change agent. But that yes and life, it's a lifestyle. It's a lifestyle, and I live by it. I live by it every single day. I live by it every single day.
I love that because honestly, it's been life changing for me too. And I sometimes feel like that's so dramatic sounding like it changed my life, these two
No, it's
words,
true.
but it really has. I was not brought up on this optimistic and just the forces and the influences that you have in your life and the people around you were not living yes and mindset
Yeah,
in my
yeah,
world for the
yeah.
most part. And then I get into this community of improv and taking classes and this possibility that yes and has on stage. And so my improv journey started January 2020, so right before COVID. And then
Oh, wow.
I took improv classes online for almost about 2 years during COVID times and stuff, and while certainly everything was very uncertain and crazy, having that yes
Oh,
and that
wow. I bet.
community of improv helped me get through it, to
Yeah.
be quite frank,
Oh, I can
like,
totally
and be
see
more
that. Oh, that's
positive.
awesome. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Oh, that's so interesting. And I can totally imagine that. And I can totally see, yeah, you know, uh, wow, the great unknown, right? I mean, what a weird,
Mhm.
hard time that was in the beginning of not knowing where what was happening and what was going on. What a valuable, and that's the kind of brain rewiring that changes you forever, right?
Oh, yeah, because then you go or I go, "Oh, well, I'm feeling this. I really like public speaking and improv. What can I do with that? Yes, and I can start a business and I can start
Yep.
speaking about it." And, where my mind was always going and taught to be like, well, you're not experienced enough. You're not good
Yep.
enough. You don't know enough yet. You need to research more. You need to be
Yep.
more in order to start. And
Yep.
yes, and says, hold on, just one step at a time.
One step at a
Let's yes
time.
and
Right.
this and see what happens from there.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, yes and isn't about, it doesn't have to be giant leaps. It doesn't have to be, it doesn't have to be huge. I mean, yes and can be absolute one tiny little step in front of the other. One little, connection to see, where what goes where. I, you know, I can completely see what a valuable experience that was. That would have been during that time. That's amazing. That's amazing.
I love seeing the light bulbs of people when I do, applied improv trainings and stuff and teaching the yes and. We did it in our session at the conference,
Yes.
no buts or no because, yes but versus yes and.
Yep.
And I'm just going back to the conference, the room got so loud that the conference organizers came in and was like, "Hey, you're being too loud," because there was so much connection and energy
Yeah,
happening because people were so excited about the exercise, and then kind of the takeaways afterwards.
yeah,
I mean, it's so
permission.
powerful. I just
Yeah,
yeah,
yes, and is permission, and we live in a world full of, boundaries and no's and,
red tape.
stay in your
Yeah.
lane, yeah, stay in your lane moments, and to have a safe place to have permission is just really lovely, really, really lovely. Yeah, improv, so yes, I have not taken a class in a really, really long time.
Doesn't
I
sound
have
like you need to.
I doesn't sound like it. I have been teaching a lot in different environments. I can really see how the improv skills, I didn't think of it as applied improv, but it really is. But thinking about all the different environments I've been in, I partly do it I partly do it because I want people when I have a new job or when I'm with a new my team at work. I ended up teaching them my improv work. Took them through my improv workshop because I was just like, well, I'm going to be like this, and I need them to know what I'm like. Right? I need people to
Mhm.
understand and appreciate where I'm coming from. And so where if I've been when I went to graduate school, I taught it to everybody. So I ended up teaching this workshop
Oh,
in informal ways, but then I ended up doing it in very formal ways as well. And I find that it really resonates for people just teaching again these improv skills in different workplace settings really is a very powerful again it's not that everyone's going to end up living it 24/7 like we will, but it ends up being a new tool for them to maybe get outside some of their ruts sometimes.
mhm. Absolutely. It pulled me out of a rut for sure. And yeah, it really transformed my life. And I like that idea too that you said that you had kind of two separate careers and maybe one's higher than the other, sometimes one's
Yep,
lower. But they all kind of benefit each other too. Like the skills from
that's
stand up
right.
and improv really benefited your professional life. And then you could bring in maybe some of the funny moments from your corporate professional life into improv and
True.
stand up.
Well, it's funny because, when you're a stand-up and you don't have a lot of like other, what are you going to talk about? Airplanes? It's like, what kind of, audiences are actually, they go to jobs every day. So it's actually really lovely to have like real life experiences that you can talk about on stage that people are like, oh my God, I totally have that in my office as well. You can really tell with a lot of stand-ups, if you watch them closely, right, you're like, oh, right, like, they don't have jobs. They don't have day jobs anymore, a lot of them. A lot of them
Anymore,
still
yeah.
do. Right. And so then they're sort of the circle of knowledge ends up getting a little bit different about what to talk about. So I actually always wondered, yeah, what would it be like? Most of my life, when I was doing stand up, I always had other work going on to be able to draw from,
Mhm.
or I was always very involved with other things versus some stand-ups I know that had a very just like all they did was stand up, all they did was travel, all they did was work in front of audiences. And I thought, oh God, what are you going to talk about?
Yeah. Well, observations are everywhere if you're open to observing
That's
and
true.
seeing them.
That's true. Yeah.
You can find the funny, and I took one stand-up class, and we're recording this in June 2024, so it's been a year now since I took my first and last stand-up class, and it was so much fun, very supportive environment. The teacher, Solange, was super supportive, which is sometimes not common of stand-up
Yes.
classes too.
True.
So it was a very
100%
safe
true. Yep.
space.
Yep.
I did a lot of mom jokes, which is funny because I
That's
wasn't a
good.
mom then, but I have a very mom personality, and I
Oh,
feel like
that's
I
funny.
manifested this
Oh,
mom
that's funny.
thing
That's
a
funny.
little bit from
That's
my
funny.
jokes. Still, I have a little notebook, I write out my jokes, and you gotta get back into the habit of it. If you let it
Yeah.
go, it goes quick.
Yeah, you can't stand up is not something that you can sort of come in and out of very easily. You have to, you stay on it and be, when people find out that I was a stand up and they're sort of like, oh, when I wish you could get up and do it again, or we could watch you do it. I'm like, it's not something that you just stand up and go, it really is something that takes a lot of time and effort.
Yeah.
And I don't miss it at all. I don't miss, stand-up comedy it's really hard. It's a lot of work. It's a huge amount of effort goes into it. And I when you're working as a stand-up comic, you don't y I sometimes found I didn't have a lot of time to watch stand-up comedy, right? You're always writing, you
Mhm.
feel like you should always be working on something. There's also a little bit of a challenge. You don't wanna listen to a lot of other stand-up comics because there's a fear that sometimes someone else's joke might get planted in the back of your head, and
Right.
at some point you'll write something down, and it's hard not to be influenced by things you hear. So I remember people sort of saying that, like, why we don't sort of all watch each other stand up comedy, especially until you have your own real sort of point of view. But anyway,
Yeah.
now I'm so happy to have retired from stand up, because now I get to be just enjoy stand up comedy. And I love
Yeah.
all stand up. I watch everybody, and I really appreciate all kinds of stand up comedy.
So you're not hypercritical or judgmental because we're all trying our best, right? There.
Not at all. I'm not at all. I mean, I really appreciate lots of different kinds of stand up and points of view. And I watch comics that you would sort of think, oh, oh, Jessica Halem's not going to find that redneck tour very funny. And there isn't anything I think as powerful as watching somebody from a totally different walk of life talk about their experiences with humor. I think it's a
Ah,
really powerful way to learn about other people's life experiences through watching stand-up comedy.
that is a very mature and lovely
Is it?
response in a very judgmental world that we live in where,
Yeah,
people can be very hypercritical of,
yeah.
just, "Oh, the way they told that joke, they could have said it this way," and, you're like, "I've done this,
I
and I would change this," and it's, "No, I just wanna sit here and enjoy it."
That's
Uh
right. Listen, funny is funny. I mean, I a lot of great famous stand-up comics, I remember asking them about, what do you do if you're sharing the stage with someone who says something offensive, or, something
Mhm.
about people like you, or, I'm a part of a community that's often used to especially be the brunt of everybody's jokes. And the
Mhm.
truth
Yeah.
is, if it's funny, I might laugh, you know? Some of the best ways to, be feel appreciated and seen is by a really, really good joke. Now, that doesn't, I believe in the fundamental power of the comedy rule, which is punching up and not punching down.
Yes.
I don't think
Mhm.
there's anything, but it's just not funny, right? There's nothing funny about someone in a more powerful position making fun of somebody who's weaker than them. That's just definitely not going to be funny. That's just weak and cheap
Right.
jokes. But gosh, making fun of, punching up, oh my gosh, of course, that's going to be great. Or making, again, or even better, making fun of yourself.
Yes. Exactly. Jessica, I wanna take the quickest of breaks. We're gonna come right back, and I wanna chat more about your work and your advocacy for LGBTQ plus communities and people populations. We're kinda getting into it, so quick break, we'll be right back. And we're back talking with Jessica Halem all about improv, stand-up comedy, and also building communities and advocating for communities. So many golden nuggets that have come up, and I don't know why I keep saying golden nuggets, but it's the phrase keeps coming up. Everything you say, I'm like, "Oh, it's pure gold. It's so good." And Jessica, I just, you've alluded to it, the work that you do and how important it is to create connection and belonging amongst communities and advocating for people who need it and populations that need
Mhm.
it. And so we're recording this episode in June 2024, Pride Month.
Yeah,
Mhm.
happy Pride.
Happy Pride. And really, it needs to be more than a month. I mean, Pride Month should be
Uh,
every month, right? But pick
well,
June.
it is in my house, it really is. But it is nice to have a designated time that workplaces
Yes.
pay me to do this work. I'll take the budget. I'll take a cupcake, I'll take a check.
Well, yeah, and I know you're very busy this month, especially every month, but this month for sure. So thanks for coming on. and chatting about this. And, I remember from your presentation that you did at the conference, you talked about kind of the history and like where we've been and how far we've come, but also how much improvement is still needed. Of course, we recognize that, but the health inequities and disparities that LGBTQ plus populations experience, certainly if someone like me or, privileged, we don't think about, in our daily lives, some of the struggles that people have.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. Our bodies don't know the difference. I'll tell you this. Sometimes, one of the things that we all have in common, it doesn't matter how much money we have or how much safety and security we have, our bodies feel stress. Our bodies
Mm.
feel external stress. And those headlines, politicians using us as, fodder for votes.
Mm.
And, just the up and down of how life can be around being someone of a minoritized experience in the United States. I can sit here in beautiful Massachusetts where I know my governor has my back, but at the end of the day, your adrenal system doesn't know it. We have this fight or flight mechanism that we've probably all seen the data about this, but that fight or flight mechanism that's a part of our human beings. It's in our DNA. It's who we were as cavemen. Dinosaur. I wasn't dinosaurs, and whatever was coming at us, right? I don't know. I'm literally. I don't know even know why I said that. It turns out we weren't around the same time as dinosaurs. I still can't get over that. Humans and
Oh, yeah.
dinosaurs weren't on the
It
planet at the same time. Anyway,
we couldn't coexist together, I
we
imagine.
couldn't
Yeah.
coexist. Anyway, so that fight or flight mechanism is still in us. It unfortunately still interprets an email as
Uh-huh.
that trigger. So that fight or flight mechanism is still in all of us. And I think, for those of us who get that fight or flight triggered more, it creates more health problems. So
Yeah.
that's really at the end of the day when we talk about LGBTQ healthcare disparities and concerns and what I'm trying to educate and change. It really comes down to how all of these external stressors really affect us on our daily and in our physical selves and our mental selves. So, you started off by saying, remembering for those of us who feel more safe and privileged at different times.
Mhm.
Unfortunately, we still have a fight or flight mechanism and it still affects our health. So, it might not be, due to poverty or not knowing where your next meal is going to come from, but those feelings of safety, that feelings of fear, that feelings of anxiety, they're still affecting our health, right? Yes, if you are rich, your life expectancy is better, but boy, you add up enough stressors and your life expectancy gets really bad really fast.
Mhm.
So, whatever it is, you add them up. It doesn't matter. You add up your privileges and you now add up all your risks and your stressors, and your
Yeah.
body keeps the score, as we say, right?
Oh, yeah. And, the forces and odds against populations like LGBTQ plus communities they're up against a lot. And one of the things that I mentioned in your bio is that the healthcare directory that
Yes.
GLMA put together, where it's a directory of healthcare professionals who are knowledgeable and sensitive to LGBTQ plus people and what they need when they go to the doctor.
Right.
I mean, that
Simple, right? Like a simple
simple, yeah.
intervention, right? It feels, it took, trust me, making websites, as anyone listening to this knows who's trying to develop a really beautiful, easy to use website. Not that that's simple, but the truth is that, some of these big problems could be, some of those little steps, as we've been saying with our yes and philosophy. It's okay, let's not let perfection, what's that expression? Don't let perfection be the enemy of done or good.
Oh,
Good.
yeah.
Let
Yeah.
perfection be the enemy of good. Yeah. So the idea is do something, right? Put something together. And so we know that one of the challenges that LGBTQ people face is we don't go to the doctor. We're afraid of discrimination or being met with
Mhm.
stigmatizing judgment. We all, not most people listening to this don't enjoy going to the doctor and burying their soul and their fanny to somebody in a cold exam room. Nobody
I can't
nobody
wait to
looks
have this
forward.
baby. Yeah.
No one like you're going to be butt in the air. It's
Yeah.
not like great. There's some sort of great group of people that do it like that, but the truth is that, the more stuff you bring to that exam room, the more, baggage from what
Mhm.
religion says about you, what your parents might have said about you, what society says about you, all that, whether you've internalized it or you just think that other people are thinking it. It's hard then to go to a doctor and feel like you're going to get judgment free advice, right?
And
You
care.
just
Yeah.
that they actually care and they're not going to judge you, and you can tell them all your freaky deaky shit and they're not going to be like, "Whoa, hold on a second there, right? I can't help you with that. You got to go see somebody else," right? It's like we
Mhm.
need a doctor we can let it all hang out. You got to find a doctor that you can just let it all hang out. And so, you know, maybe that would be a better name for the directory, the let it all hang out directory. But that's what we tried to do, is put together a place where, not too high of a bar. We don't have a certification or any great, blue ribbon panel for
Yeah.
designating who's in the directory. Take it, with a grain of salt. But it's a group of doctors that have at least raised their hand and said, I'm not going to judge you. I'm not an asshole. I might not have all the answers, but I'm not an asshole.
And again, I know it's a simple idea, of course. Now it's harder to execute, definitely a big implementation process too, but one of the other things you talked about in the presentation that I saw is just more inclusive communication strategies that you can do in your daily life, that companies can do, we
Simple.
can do as
Yes,
people, and it can be simple as using gender neutral language as well.
that's right. And we have so much overly gendered language that really ends up being meaningless to most people. They're not even paying attention. But to those people who, might have a gender identity we can't assume by looking at them, people in their family might be transgender, or just, they're women who are tired of being called ladies and girls. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
How about just that? I mean, my God, I'm 52 years old. I'm no girl. And, the word ladies is such an old, historically racialized word that really has a history that's really awful. And so, it's hard to not start a speech with ladies and gentlemen. It is
Ah.
really, really hard to not start a speech with ladies and gentlemen. But when you think about ladies and gentlemen, like who are, we're not
So stuffy.
plan plantation owning aristocrats, you know? So it's a great public speaking meets, gender equity, race aware moment. Ladies and gentlemen is a very racialized terminology that by just, taking that phrase that is just a throwaway line and actually getting more thoughtful about it, you can create a more inclusive, expansive, welcoming environment. You know, friends and colleagues,
Yeah.
um, honored guests, lovers and exes, but taking even that introduction that is so silly and old, stodgy, ladies and gentlemen, and instead finding a more gender inclusive way to sound, just more expansive is a great way to take all those moments more seriously.
I've noticed that even when I do emails and stuff, I work with a lot of, teams of female
Yeah.
presenting individuals,
Yep.
and
Yeah.
I think all their pronouns are she, her, but I mean, we haven't really talked
Right.
about it. But when I email them, I say, "Hi, hey team," or "Hi team,"
Yeah.
and I like
Easy.
that rather than "Hey ladies." It's
Oh
like
my God.
we're a
Hey,
team.
ladies in the work, you're a team. I know. And you sort of highlighting and, highlighting gender in that moment and using a word like the ladies. Yeah, exactly. This is the workplace. We're a team. colleagues, friends, even, again, it's an opportunity. Some people might roll their eyes thinking about, language isn't that important, just get over it. But I think when you start being more self-aware of the language you're using, you can really use it you really can start to build more connection.
I see it a lot in restaurants. I have some friends that have the they, them pronouns, and especially when we're together, it looks like
Yeah.
2 females.
Looks like a group of girls, right?
Yeah, servers will come up and say, "Oh, hey, ladies, how's it going? Here's the
Oh
specials for
my God,
today," and
what are we gonna do? And then you look at your friend who uses they, them pronouns and they're crushed. It's like they're
or
about
they
to,
roll
it's
their
just what
eyes. They're like,
they
"Ugh,
roll their eyes. Oh
I'm not fighting
God.
this battle," you know?
Right.
Yeah.
And what a challenge for people to like have to think when they're out in the world, how to navigate. Do I need to say something? Should I not say something? When I'm with people and it gets gendered incorrectly, and I feel like, should I say something? Should I be the one to stand up? And now it's like, I just wanted to have a meal. We just wanted to get some coffee. So I don't know what we have to do to get to the food service industry to get them to stop saying ladies. Oh my gosh. I mean, someone tell me how to get to the food service industry. I know that wait staff are very overworked and underpaid and busy, stressed out people,
Yes.
but please stop saying ladies.
And there's no harm, there's no intent behind it. It's a simple thing, again,
That's right.
that can make everything more inclusive and that can show that you're trying to be more inclusive.
That's right.
And yeah,
That's right.
I know some people in the public health world, we are very serious about inclusive language. We're very
Yes, we're very
serious about
serious. Very serious.
we're super serious
Yeah.
about
Yeah.
inclusivity and language and finding simple strategies to do that. And when I drove away from the conference in April, I rode with a friend back and I was like, all this stuff about health equity, like we know is public health. Like it's great to hear and it's great to reaffirm and get strategies and ideas on how to do that better. And I'm like, everyone needs to come to this conference. Our business owners and people with business degrees and their leadership,
Yeah.
management leadership, are they hearing these same messages? And I think that's what you're trying to do in your speaking world, but we're getting there, but I'm like, other industries need to hear this too.
I totally agree with you. I totally agree with you.
And it seems like you're trying to do that. So how do you help advise companies, entrepreneurs, public agencies,
Yeah.
healthcare agencies
I,
in helping to shrink the gap of health disparities?
That's a great way to put it about shrinking the gap. The great part about being a yes and person is I get to say yes to everybody and anybody who wants to help. The goal is to meet people where they're at. So people will come to me with a question and I will just try to figure out the answer. It can start off really simply, and it really does end up being a lot about communications and language. And it's sort of one of those first things that people will think they need help with. Hey, Jessica, we are rewriting our survey, or we're rewriting
Oh
our
yeah.
forms, or we just worked with a company that launched a health product, a what's it called, a supplement, right? And it's a supplement that they would have said, it's geared towards women. It's supplement for
Mm.
women. And they wanted to make sure that they were speaking in internally and externally in their marketing in an inclusive way. So it's not that there is still a category of people called women. I'm not disbanding that completely. But how do we make sure that when we are speaking about the category of women, or people who maybe no longer or don't identify as women, but might find their product helpful, right? So it's a product that improves a certain aspect of health that we used to say only affected women, but we know not everybody who identifies as women, but they might still be find the product helpful. So, boy, why would you leave money on the table, right? This is a
Mhm.
business that wants
Yeah.
to speak to everybody that would benefit from this product. So we got to work with them over the past couple months, educating internally their internal staff, understanding the context and why we talk about women's health in a more inclusive way, and the research behind that and the evidence. And then we actually got to rewrite some materials for them and say, like, here's how you would do that. And the point is that, like, I do this for a living. I think about it every day. But if you're sort of just thinking about it for the first time, you sort of look at it, you're like, well, how the heck am I supposed to do this? So it's easy for me to come in, teach you how to do it, but also just sort of, teach you why, teach you the context, all the big picture, but then maybe just sort of help you write some stuff.
Well, and I remember a slide from your presentation too that said something to the effect of, "You do not need to understand or even like us to treat everyone with respect and dignity." And I think that's what it boils down to. I mean, that's what pride is all about too,
That's
and
right.
I mean, certainly we've come a long way, but also there's more road to
That's
pave
right.
and
That's right. That's right.
and
I mean, it goes
respect.
back to
Yeah.
our conversation about, punching down versus
Yep.
punching up. You can find some of this LGBTQ stuff confusing and new and maybe even really rocks some of your worldview and goes against maybe some of your worldview or values or politics. And that's okay. I'm not actually interested anymore in changing people's hearts and minds that aren't interested. It's fine. People are raised with very strong feelings, or they have very real reasons for thinking that. That's on them. But what I do think we can do is treat each other, even if we disagree, with great respect and dignity. And it's hard to do every day, but I think that we can just remind each other that when we are talking about things that might be new or different than anything we've ever thought of before, how can we approach that with oh, I hadn't thought about that, and oh, I see that that's important to you, and I'm going to leave that be. And obviously, I think a lot about this to do with transgender folks, which is, I see a lot of people will say, well, I don't agree with that or sort of disagree, and I'm like, well, you know, you can have your feelings, but that doesn't mean that we speak about other people in a negative way. It doesn't mean we don't speak with cruelty towards one another. And I think we need to get to a
Mhm.
place where we're a lot less cruel and mean and a lot more compassionate and loving, and put aside, whether or not I quote unquote agree or disagree, but instead just treat each other with some compassion.
Beautifully said. Yeah. One thing that came up at the conference again, just because that was my big, time to travel. I haven't really gotten out since then because
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm not traveling anymore, so
Yeah.
that was
Yep.
my
Yep.
big hurrah, but at the conference when Jesse, my co-presenter, and I were leading our intensive sessions, they brought up the platinum rule, which I hadn't heard of, and I don't know where it came from, where they got it from, but the golden rule is treat others how you would like to be treated. The platinum rule is treat others how they would like to be treated.
Oh,
And
that's beautiful.
right, I hadn't heard that before,
Oh,
and that really stood out when they said it, and I was like, yeah, because 'cause we've always been taught how we would like to be treated, but how they would like to be treated, and support everyone in what they need right now. Yeah, and that's essentially
yeah.
what you're trying to do.
Yeah. I mean, that feels like a yes and philosophy. I mean, it's about them, yes anding, and that rule, platinum rule, feel like being really sensitive and aware of the other person. And that's again not for the faint of heart. This is hard to do. We have days where it's hard to do that. But yes, in the best possible light, that is a wonderful way to think about. If you make your scene partner look good and feel good, it
Mhm.
makes everything better, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Jessica, you've done so much in your career and obviously not slowing down or stopping anytime soon. What's next on your journey? In an ideal world, like if you could create and world build and paint this whole reality, like
Oh,
what would your world look like on this journey?
oh, that's such a good question. I think ultimately I'm curious. I spend most of my time helping people in positions of leadership or power, or in the middle of all of that, maybe a lot of power, maybe a little bit of power, how to make change, how to change the workplace they're in charge of, how to change the team, how to change their product. Everybody's trying to do something better, or learn, get some help them do that thing. And ultimately, mostly in the health and wellness space. I think I'm really curious next if I had $1 million right now, I would love
Mhm.
to figure out, how to turn some of that into a more personal, how to help, for lack of a better phrase, patients, how to help regular people feel better about going to the doctor. So a big part of what I do sort of boils down to people don't go to the doctor. Your health gets worse. Nothing is made better by not going to the doctor, getting what you
Right.
need from the doctor. So I try to change doctors. I try to change the healthcare system. And so I think if I had my druthers, I would spend time on the other end of that spectrum, on the other end of that equation, which is the patient. Okay, what do you need to get in the door? What do you need to make that visit better? What do you need to arm yourself with? What do you wish you knew? What do you need to, read or watch or think about as you go, thinking about a pap smear. Oh my God, this is so stressful. I don't want to do it. And then people don't do it. And then things can only get worse from there. So thinking about, okay, what would it look like to create products or solutions so that the person that really doesn't want to get the mammogram or the pap smear or the skin cancer check, what do they need okay, I'll get you a list of doctors. I'll train the doctor. I'll change the forms. I'm doing everything I can on the inside. What do you need now to just get in there? What will, and be open and honest during that visit. So that's, I think, what's next for me is to think about that piece of the equation.
There's a huge gap again in trust between patients and the healthcare industry, and there's a lot of information and disinformation out there now too. I see it just in my world as a mom to be. There's a lot of distrust of, epidurals, for
Yep.
example,
Yep. Yeah.
and obviously everyone has their choice to make, and I've made mine as well, but I just see there's so much information out there. It is overwhelming, and then if you
Yeah.
find someone you trust
Interesting.
online, then that may lead to distrust of the medical professional too, and then also how they phrase it sometimes. I had one doctor, they came in and they were like, "Oh, you're advanced maternal age because 'cause I'm 36, having a
Yes.
baby."
Yes.
Luckily, they
Yes,
don't say
you are.
geriatric
You're supposed to
pregnancy
do it when you're
anymore.
16.
And she said, "You should start taking aspirin, low dose aspirin, because that gives you a 15% reduction in your blood pressure." And this is not my OB that I'm seeing, this is another doctor, and then anyway, I'm like, "Well, wait, I have so many questions, my blood pressure's good, and 15% doesn't seem like that huge of a reduction," like, and so I think the phrasing of it can be better. So on the part of the medical professional side, the communication strategies of it, really sitting down and explaining, "Here's why I think this low dose aspirin
Yeah.
will help you," instead of coming in and be like, "Start taking this now." And I'm like, "Oh, hold up. Who
I
are
know. Oh
you
my
and
God. Aren't they the
why?"
worst? Oh my gosh. Oh, but that's such a perfect example. Yeah, they really are the worst
And they just
at doing
expect you
that
to
well. Yeah.
follow suit. Like, "I've said this is written in stone now, you should do this." And you're like, "Well, wait." And then you do research online that says aspirin could harm the baby, and so I asked my OB, and then she's, "Well, that's the wrong source that you're looking at." And it's a big
Right.
spinning world of
It's,
information, and
oh my gosh.
who do you trust?
Yeah, that's
Um,
such a good point.
yeah, and then I can imagine for other groups who've had more distrust with the healthcare system, and of course, COVID did not help either, so
No,
I
right,
love this
right.
vision of the world
Oh,
where,
good.
you're helping both healthcare and the patient side of
Yeah.
things
Oh,
too.
good. Well, I'll draft you when I get that $1,000,000.
Yeah. We can do all our yes and trainings for both sides of the
Oh,
puzzle.
good, good, good. Oh, perfect.
Oh, Jessica, love all the work you're doing with the ADOS Health Initiative. I mean, all the work that you do in your business and your speaking. I mean, you're wonderful. You're doing such
Thank
wonderful
you.
work that's
Oh,
really helping people.
thank you. I really appreciate that.
Yeah, and I mean, we've already talked about yes and mindset, and it's a growth mindset and how you live your life. And our listeners listening, just so inspired by you. Where can our listeners find out more about you?
Well, I'm an open book. Everything you read online is true, but
No
I have a
disinformation
website.
there.
No disinformation. less and less on social media these days, but I used to be a big poster, but I haven't been doing as much as I used to. But I am on social media and everything is just, Jessica Halem. But my website, check me out there, drop me a note, find me on LinkedIn or Instagram. I really do love hearing from people and connecting with people who are doing, this kind of work or interested in this kind of work. I am an organizer at heart. And so I really do
Mm.
love it when people get in touch.
Do you have any big speeches, keynotes, conferences coming
What do
up this
I
year that
have
you're
coming
excited
up?
about?
Oh, I don't, I mean, this is like such a busy month. What can I
Yeah.
say? I'm like,
Get through this month first. Yeah.
I just got to get through this month. But yeah, it's just one day at a time these days. We're all just gearing up. We're all just gearing up for the next thing. We'll see.
Well, in how busy you are, last question for you. Do you have any creative outlets that you like to do outside of speaking and changing the world? Any
Well,
arts or things you dabble in?
I know that's such a good, I love to cook and I love to work with
Oh,
here on Cape Cod. We have a little bit of a yard and outdoor area. And so being
jealous.
physically active is that way is really important to me. But I will tell you, my number one outlet for, decompression and it always was great for writing comedy material was cleaning. Was always cleaning
Cleaning.
my house. Yeah. It was like just a physical
Huh.
cooking, cleaning, it still is. It's relaxing, uses your body, gets out of your head.
How
So,
productive too.
yeah, I think so. You're right. It's a good deadline avoider, but yeah, I love it. I love it. I love it when I love it. And when I don't, I don't.
I am definitely in the nesting and resting phase is what I call it.
Yes,
So, I clean a little bit and then I go lay on the couch and rest, and then I clean a little bit and then I rest. So, nesting and
I love it.
resting. I
I
am not
love
a
it.
big
I think that
cleaner,
sounds,
so
yeah.
uh,
Well, who does? I mean, what a silly way to spend our days. But anyway, well, this has
but
just been
decompressing.
wonderful. Yeah,
But
absolutely wonderful. Love talking about all of this. Thank you for letting me, draw all these threads together. It was a real joy.
it was such a joy to hear you so many golden nuggets today, Jessica. So appreciate it, and I can't wait to see you around at the next conferences or so, and I'll just sit in the front and just listen to everything you have to say because 'cause you're amazing.
We'll do something together. I can't wait.
Ah, thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of the
Thank you.
month, the Pride Month.
Thank you.
And thank you for listening to today's episode with the amazing Jessica Halem. Such a fun guest. I mean, she is just so much energy and infectious energy. I mean, she just makes you so excited to chat. And honestly, I could just listen to her chat and talk all day, whether it's about New Orleans or health equity issues or stand up and improv. I mean, God, she is such a gem. I had so much fun chatting with her today. I hope you enjoyed it as well. I love that Jessica was in the heyday of improv and stand up in Chicago. That's incredible in the 90s. What an amazing experience. And it's funny because you go through that and you're in that time period where you're like, "Hey, I live in Chicago and I'm doing this cool stuff. That's awesome." And then 20 to 30 years later, it's looked back on as this amazing period of history for improv and stand up where it all kind of accumulated and came together and really burst at the seams and grew out to other major cities and now even smaller cities too are embracing the comedy world and all that it has to offer. So I just love that Jessica was there in it, in the thick of it. And I also am so glad that we got to chat today. So I'm just going to give you this reminder and encouragement. If you are going to any conference or retreat or whatever it is, and you meet somebody that you're like, they're so cool. I can't wait to talk with them. Or ahead of time, you see someone's there and you're like, oh, I'm going to chat with them. Chat with them when you see them. Or make time or, like, set a time, be like, "Hey, can we chat after this session?" or whatever, because that is exactly what happened at the conference. I would see Jessica in passing and be like, "Oh, I wanna chat about improv with you. Let's chat after this." And, we all move around and it gets so busy and, yeah, you think you have so much time, and then poof, the conference is over and you're like, "Oh, no, we didn't get to connect." And she's such an amazing advocate for everyone, for all populations of people, and also for improv, and I wanted to chat with her. So, I'm so glad we got to do it today and sit down and just hear the full story of how it started, and it was awesome. At the end, we talked a lot about inclusive language, and I recently went to another virtual conference in May where one of the keynote speakers was talking about just the power of language and how much it affects us. And so, wherever you're coming from with the language side of things, the pronoun side of things, it is your opinion to have, but I just want to encourage you to really research and look into it from a public health standpoint and the trainings that I go to and I see language is very powerful. And a simple rephrase of saying, "Hey, ladies," to "Hey, team," "Hey, colleagues and friends," instead of "ladies and gentlemen," especially if you're in a leadership role, it is really important to be mindful of the language you use. I'm even seeing kind of a shift in some of the idioms or phrases that we use today. And again, you can chalk it up to being like, "Oh, everyone's so sensitive these days," or, "Oh, everyone's getting hurt by words," whatever. People aren't strong like they used to be. It's not like when I grew up back in the day, blah, blah, blah. But phrases like, you know, "I'm gonna take a stab at it," or, "Oh, let me take a shot at it." Those kind of things that can invoke violent images too. So it's not just like gender neutral language, but even kind of violent phrases that certainly aren't violent, right? Like I'm not actually taking a stab at something, but we can take some of that out too. And so it's just interesting being mindful of what you say, and we don't say this to put you in your head so that you're like, "Oh god, am I saying another thing wrong?" It's not that. It's just being more mindful of the language you use and how inclusive it is. And then you're going to make mistakes. Realizing you're making mistakes and making those mistakes with grace is really important. And saying, "Okay, I said this thing, it's kind of weird. I'll work on it for next time and I'll do better." We don't have to be perfect, but having the intentions behind it to do better and be better and respect one another is what Jessica's going for and what we're all going for, hopefully, and what we all can work together as a community and group of people to create this world that's a better place. I'm very inspired by all that Jessica said. Her presentation was so impactful. I remember at the conference, I was feeling really tired. I really wanted to take a nap. And I was like, "Nope, I'm going to go watch it." And I was so glad that I did. I was so glad that I didn't miss it because she had so much energy. She walked around the stage, she shared stories to go along with the slides. She was vulnerable, she was humorous. I mean, she just really engaged the whole group. And I'm sitting there watching her, one from a content perspective, but also from a speaker perspective. I'm like, that's the authenticity of a speaker that you want as your keynote speaker, as a speaker in general, at business meetings, at conferences. Like, that's what I'm trying to emulate and go for. And so I hope one day to just get on that level of comfort and also connection building that Jessica has as a speaker. She's phenomenal. She's been doing it a while, but also she loves it. And that also is a key piece of the puzzle, that she loves doing it and she loves people. I love that she said that too in this episode, that you really have to love people to be a good speaker because it's not about you as a speaker. It is about the audience and it's about them and what they take away and what gifts and messages you can give to the audience to take away and improve their lives. They don't have to remember your name. They don't have to remember who you were. But if you said something that made a difference, that's what matters. We also talked a lot about yes and mindset or growth mindset. I know in the improv world, in more of the maybe performative improv world, but even sometimes in applied improv too, yes and is a very common phrase. It can become a little trite and overused sometimes. And I think sometimes we joke about it. Oh, yes and let's do it kind of thing. But when you zoom out and just think about the message of yes and, I love how Jessica said it's transformed her life. She uses it every single day, even though she's not in improv classes anymore. She uses these skills of improv to improve her relationships and her interactions with the world. It's crazy how powerful these two words are together, yes and the freedom that it does give you, the permission that it gives you to try new things, take risks, go for something that maybe you wouldn't normally. And so I want to ask you today to think about something that you really want, something you want to do, something you want to go for. It could be career related, it could be a personal thing, whatever it is. Are you saying yes and to yourself to do that thing, that task, that goal that you want to meet? Are you no butting yourself or yes butting yourself, which while those might sound different, they're really kind of the same. I usually say yes but is just a passive aggressive way of saying no or no because or no but. When I do trainings for applied improv, skills based trainings, I always use a yes and exercise. And I love bringing it to teams because a yes and mindset can really help in the corporate space, in the team space where you have to interact with each other, hear each other's ideas, and not just say, "Oh no, that won't work," and move on. Like really hear them and listen to them. You can stress test them later and be like, okay, we explored this and maybe this isn't the right time or it would be logistically hard to do. But yes and allows you to hear the ideas and also expand and add to them. And you can find an idea, 4 or 5 yes ands from that original idea that you never would have come to if you said no to the original idea. And so I love that for the corporate and team space. And I say corporate, it could be any kind of team interaction, sports teams, company teams, family dynamics. I mean, really, anytime you interact as a team, yes and is very helpful. And also on the personal side is really where yes and changed my life is how I started to talk to myself in a better way and say yes and to myself more. I am a big perfectionist. I think that's come through in a lot of episodes, and I'm a big people pleaser. And so oftentimes I will tell myself no if it relates to someone else or something else that I'm supposed to be doing or something I feel like I'm supposed to be doing. I want to make others feel good. And all that's great. It's very, well, I don't know if it's great, but all of that's fine. And I'm working on that and having better boundaries that support my needs and wants as well. But yes, and in the personal sense, really allowed me to go for what I wanted. I'd been feeling for a while that in my professional careers that I could do more, and I didn't know what that more was. And so I spent years just circling and struggling to figure out what I wanted to do. And finally I had someone say, "Well, you like improv and you like public speaking. So can you find a way to combine those 2?" And they meant it more in the sense of like, can you teach improv, like performative improv classes, like comedic improv classes? And I was like, well, I kind of said, no, I'm not there yet, the comedic wise to teach those classes. However, there is applied improv and there's the skills of improv and combining that with public speaking, yes, there is something there. And I can build upon that. And it's taken a while. It's taken 2 to 3 years to build up my improvly speaking business. And I really needed that yes and mindset to get me to start the business. If I didn't have the idea of yes and in my mind and really feel it in my body, this business, this podcast, my speeches and presentations at the conference in April wouldn't have happened. I would have cut it off in its tracks years ago because I would have said no to it. No, I'm not ready. No, I have to go back to school and get my MBA. No, I have to read these books and learn all this. And I'm not saying I don't have to do any of that. I don't think I need to go back for my MBA, at least right now, although it would be super interesting to learn. I can read books and study, and I can still start the business at the same time. Having that yes and mindset has helped me grow as a business owner and actually start my business and as a podcast host. But it's also helped me in my job too, my career, to kind of use the skills that I have and bring it into what I'm doing. And so I do some sessions with clients and stuff now. I talk about improv more with the clients that I work with, and I've kind of made them relate to each other. And I'm really enjoying what I'm doing. I love this podcast. I love getting to talk to people and learn from them and hear their stories. I hope that it inspires you as much as it inspires me. And I really can thank the yes and mindset for getting me here and also getting me there in the future and helping me to get to where I want to be. So, how can you say yes and to yourself more? Notice it. Notice when the no's are happening, maybe what's going on at the time. What's your mood like? Be aware of it and then say, how can I say yes and to this idea? And just discover and see what comes up. How powerful is that? Let me know what's coming up for you. Please feel free to reach out to me. I encourage you to follow Jessica, reach out to her. She's amazing. Check out what she's doing with the ADOS initiative and also in her speaking business and consulting business. Also, please reach out to me if anything came up for you today. On Instagram, I'm at Improvly Speaking. On LinkedIn, I'm at Dayna Gowan. And my website is improvryspeaking.com. I don't know where the quote of the platinum rule came from. I did get it from my co-presenter, Jesse Greenfield. I'm not sure where they got it from, but I want to leave you with that message. So we all know the golden rule of treat others how you would like to be treated. And let's add to that and yes and that with the platinum rule to say, let's treat others how they would like to be treated. Let's have respect and dignity for every person. Again, we're recording this in June, in Pride Month. I'm a huge ally and supporter of all LGBTQ plus people and populations, and I want them to feel safe and supported in the communities that they live in. I love all these organizations and people and advocates who are doing the work to decrease the gap of health disparities and health issues and health inequities that are affecting our LGBTQ plus populations. And I hope to be a part of that. And I hope this podcast adds to it and at least affirms and maybe reaffirms your perspective or gives you something to think about. And again, we don't have to change your mind, but I hope the message that you leave with today is that we must and we have to treat everyone with respect and dignity. That is how we better our world and better our society. We'll make mistakes and we'll make them with grace. We might feel uncomfortable at times because we're doing new things, we're making big changes, and that's how change gets made. Thank you so, so much for listening and supporting Improvly Speaking. Go out and flex your creative thinking and change the world for the better. I'll talk to you next time.